Okay, so this is a tripod, obviously, which just means it has 3 feet. So what I want to show you is some of the key features to be aware of when you're using it. The most important feature is this right here. This is the base plate. Usually on most tripods there's a lever that you push out and it just lifts out because it has these grooves. You'll notice that there's a level which you can use to help level off the camera. And then there's a screw in the middle. And what this screw does is it allows you to attach this base plate to a camera. I'm using a digital camera as an example because I'm recording with the actual camera. So you'll see most cameras come with a little screw hole in the bottom, and you just take the base plate and carefully underneath there's a little screw in, and then your camera's mounted on the base plate. And this makes it a lot easier to attach a camera to the tripod. So again, you pull the lever out and put this back in. So you'll notice that I actually put the base plate in whichever direction I want it. It's set up so that if you have a camera that requires a certain way to put it on the base plate, it'll work any direction. So there's another level located here on most tripods that helps you center and make sure that the legs are adjusted properly so that you're not having a crooked shot. Really the key features to check on your tripod are how well it moves side to side and up to down. This will help you do tracking shots, which we'll discuss later. So there's a bunch of twisty knobs on these tripods, and generally you can tell what they're pinching by where they are. So the one that's under the base plate generally controls how easy it is to move side to side. So if you loosen this, you can get a smoother motion, but if you go too loose, it might jump on you. And if it's too tight, it won't move well and it'll be jagged. So the same is true for this lever, which generally controls the up and down. So what you can do, if you tighten that, it'll be harder to move, which can be good if you want to keep it steady. But if you're doing, again, a tracking shot, you want to be able to go up and down. A lot of newer tripods come with this rolling system to grind up. This one's a little stiff, but if you want to adjust the height, tripods can get rather high nowadays. And Wits has a wide selection to check out depending on your needs. I just showed you how to set up the tripod, and now I'll explain briefly why we recommend using a tripod. It basically boils down to the fact that a tripod will almost always be more steady than a human hand. Here is an example of shooting some footage without using a tripod. As you can notice, it gets rather shaky, especially when we zoom in here, and you can see that every little motion of my hand makes really jumps the frame around. Here we have the same footage shot using a tripod, and you can see that while we zoom in and move around, there's some shaking. Once we focus in on what we're looking at, this frame is very still. The tape marks on the board represent what's known in photography and filmmaking as the rule of thirds, which is where when you split a screen into 3 columns and 3 rows, you get this very easy to use focal point. What this means is when you're setting up a shot, this object you want the audience to focus on should be located within the middle section. Not necessarily just centered with the frame. You actually want to give it some space away from the top and bottom, so that, for example, I want you focusing on my face right now, so instead of putting it here at the top, I want it actually in the middle of the frame. Another important thing to take into consideration when setting up a shot is the headroom you give the characters who are on screen. So what this means is, again, unless it's your artistic intent, you don't want to cram your people into this tiny box. What you want to do is give them space to think up here, and so that it's not so cramped in. Some of the consequences of ignoring this is you can make your shot feel really cramped, or it's really easy for the person to not be in frame. Whereas if you have headroom, even if your actor is moving around, but if you're at the proper distance, you're still not losing the person's head while they're talking. Space is really important to consider is when you're having two people on screen talking at once. So if I was joined on screen by this lovely Cheburashka, and we were trying to have dialogue, we wouldn't want to be cramped together like this, having him sing his song. What we would want is space between us so that we could actually have some dialogue going on, and there's room for it to fill up. So that we can imagine word bubbles coming out from his mouth while he's speaking, and there's enough space for word bubbles to come out of my mouth while I'm speaking. Whenever you have characters moving on screen, you want to be very conscious of where they are in the frame. You don't want characters who are in the dialogue continuing to pop in and out of the frame, to run by and just as they're speaking. What you want to do is have your cameraman perform tracking shots. And that is, you want them to keep the character who's on focus within the rule of thirds, in addition to keeping the headspace and any talking room they might need. So you want to make sure that your cameraman has the tripod set up so that the dials are loose, so there's a smooth action as you're moving. Unless you have access to some more professional equipment than is usually available here at Willamette, chances are that the microphone built into the camera you're using will only be between decent and good. So the audio that you'll be getting for these projects most often won't be great, and that's okay. You just need to understand the limitations of the equipment you're using. Most new HD cameras, digital cameras, have a front-facing directional microphone, which this means that there is a small microphone in the front that is catching any audio that passes inside, in front of it. So what this means is that while I sound good talking directly into the camera, something off to the side, or if I start talking away from the camera, the audio quality is going to drop. Which brings me to an important point, which comes from stage acting, is that you don't want to film the back of your characters on screen, and more often than not, you really don't want to film them from the side. You want to have them cheating out towards the camera. So you want to have them not necessarily facing it front on all the time, but at the very least turned so that their voice is being picked up by the camera in its direction. Another thing to keep in mind is while you're having fun making these projects, it's really a pain if you're taking a great shot and someone behind camera is talking. See, with Cheburashka, my cameraman, spouting out his cartoon lines every so often, it hurts the take you're doing and you'll have to redo it. Now he's serenading us with the birthday song. Something that seems counterintuitive at first is that even if you make a mistake, you should keep rolling. And just try to get it right. We have the benefit nowadays of excellent editing software that's easily available, that if you make a mistake, you can just keep going and you don't need to pause. You can just stay with it, stay in it, keep going, work through the mistake, and then edit out all the bad stuff afterwards. I've taken a couple dozen shots already for making this video, and I'll probably only use 2. So remember to keep rolling. Another important note is to start recording well before your character starts speaking. Most cameras, while they're very fast to start recording, still take a second or two to really grab on to recording the images. So you want to press the record button long before you say something like action or begin, or however your director wants to start. You want to give your actors enough space so that if they start, if you say action and they're bam, straight into their lines, you want to make sure you get it all, and you're not catching a little clip because you pressed record and didn't start right away.